Good morning. Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning, Sarah.
I'm Sarah Gibson, the Director of Marketing here at CPL. Today I'm here with Rick Henry, our President, and Kathy Metcalfe, our Chief Culture Officer. Before we get started, I'd love to just have each of you sort of talk about your history, your story with CPL, some of your working relationship together, some of those experiences. Rick, do you want to start?
Sure. I've been here 31 years. I will state for the record that Kathy's been here longer, even though she's left a couple times.
Boomerang, for sure.
Multiple boomerangs, right? We started together really in the late 80s. I was an intern. We both figured out where our lives at work were going to head, and we made it happen.
And I think that last phrase, "we made it happen," is really speaks a lot to what it's like to be here at CPL. I started out with the civil engineering team working on a landfill project, not really the engineering side, a lot of the softer side of it, but knowing that, I had opportunities to do other things, and it was up to me to make it happen, but there was also that opportunity, the open door as well. So that was really critical. So I've been here not as many years consistently over that time, but long enough to laugh. I don't even want to get into that. We joke each other about our tenure, let's put it that way,
Yeah.
lightheartedly.
I really love the idea of Rick as an intern at CPL.
Yes. So,
It's a good story.
Interestingly too, so at the same time, I think Kevin McCumber, who's on the executive board now, was part of that team. Dan was around. So there's people, which is really cool, that have really helped the organization grow. It's in their DNA is like in the organization.
Yeah, the foundation of the company,
Yes.
right? The basement at Water Street
Yeah,
is our first office, the foundation of the company.
literally. So over 31, 32 years, I mean, you guys have seen a tremendous amount of change in this organization and in this industry. Talk a little bit about sort of what that's looked like for you. And you've kind of come and gone a little bit, Kathy. So
Yeah.
what does that change look like?
The organization, the growth and the different types of work that we're doing back then and today, it's really branched out, and it's exciting to see all the innovation and things that are, from new lines of service to where we started. It was a lot of civil engineering, to be honest. That's all we did. It's transportation, civil engineering, some land development type of work. But over time, adding the architecture piece, adding planners, adding, and then the support teams that go with that to help them do their work better. Yeah, it's been quite a ride.
Yeah, I think the more it's changed, the more it's stayed the same. We do a lot of the same work. We do it different, tremendously different. I think the biggest thing that we've that's changed here is the support teams. We've and Sarah, you've heard me say this before. I'm used to doing stuff on my own. And I struggle with letting go. I still want to do everything. And that's part of our culture here. We roll up our sleeves and we do the work.
Right. It's the entrepreneurial thread that kind of runs through everybody here, that we want to do it better. That's to do it differently, but we're doing a lot of the same work, serving people, making sure that our clients can do what they need to do for their community and for their patients or the students, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, whatever their community is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's interesting, that sort of entrepreneurial nature and that agility and willingness to sort of dig in, right? Get your hands dirty is such a part of our culture. And as we get bigger, we have to sort of navigate, well, how do we still foster that and encourage that while also growing and scaling, right? There's a real kind of challenge there.
I agree. I'm paying attention.
That's Kathy's job.
And I'll say it's everybody's job.
Yeah.
As Chief Culture Officer, I love that it's a title and it's a thing that means it's important to us as an organization. But I think that it's really, we all understand it's all of our responsibility and how we treat each other every day. So.
So I'm curious, for both of you with the tenure that you've had, and we have a really interesting balance in this organization of folks who have been here less than 5, less than 3 years, and folks who have been here for multiple decades. Why have you been here so long? Why have you stayed?
Do you want to answer?
Rick mentioned I came back twice. I left I worked in a family business for a time that was really, really easy to do with having young kids, but always there was that lure back of, I kept an eye on what was going on here, and then seeing it grow and bringing up more opportunities back to me, what I understand how I could fit in differently. The last I came back in 2008, and that was when Todd had become president at the time, I think it was. And wow, it's just to see the change and the dynamic and the leadership and where this thing was going. I really wanted to be part of that. Wanted to continue to help the organization grow. I mean, that was really intriguing to me.
That's great.
So the reason I've stayed is I never had a reason to leave. I know that you didn't ask this question with this intent, but we'll roll right into retention. I had tremendous opportunity, and I had to take advantage of it, but I had that opportunity. And I think that's the cornerstone of what used to be Clark Engineers PC, and then turned into what we are today. I think everyone has that opportunity. They just need a little encouragement to take advantage of it.
Mm-hmm. And I'll say, time has changed in some regards too. The organization has always been flexible with people. I've known people that worked part-time schedules or, had to work different types of hours. And we've been really good about that. And I think that when I started to realize that I can do both, that's what really made it really healthy and a good decision for me and my family to come back full time. We continue to do that. Again, that's part of the retention question. We're starting to talk about that a little bit, but understanding that we need to have that flexibility, and lots of it's in different ways. It's flexible in different ways to make this and make people understand how they can belong and continue to be here.
Yeah. Well, let's keep sort of flowing with that topic. We know that we're in a really volatile market. We're in a volatile world, right? What are some of the things that we are maybe doing more aggressively or differently than some of our competitors when it comes to how we're keeping people and how we're focused on retention?
So in retention-wise, making sure that we have an understanding of opportunities and paths for people to grow will be part of that. We're doing a better job with it than we ever have before because people want to see the future before them. Mm-hmm. They want to see the flexibility in that future.
Yeah, and I think it's I've used this term multiple times in multiple interviews. Opportunity and taking advantage of that opportunity. I'd encourage anyone that watches this to just look at your career and say, what can it be? Because it can be whatever you want it to be. And, not everyone's going to be the president, but you can aspire, and heading down that path may lead you to something else. And that may make you even happier. So I think that there's, as it relates to, and now it seems like I'm going to take a right turn, but, what are we doing differently? We're providing technology as really a service, which we really didn't have. I mean, when I started, I used cardboard cutouts and did road profiles on a board, hand drawing them on the back of a Mylar sheet. And for people that don't know what a Mylar sheet is, There are people that do know what a Mylar sheet is, but that is what we used to use as our drawing base. And today, we now hit a button and automatically provide those sections. But you still need to know what those sections are telling you. Mm-hmm. I remember back maybe the second year I worked here, early 90s. And I worked on a project for the city of Rochester, a road project. And the city engineer had names for all the puddles next to the catch basins that were built on new roads, because invariably an engineer did the sections wrong and the contractor paved it just the way the sections called them out to be, left a puddle. And so he named the puddles after engineers.
Oh my goodness.
That's a great story.
But that's, the way technology has changed. We have so much access to so much information. I think the biggest thing in at least the engineering field, and maybe it's true for architecture, is being able to filter out the information and get the right information. And our customers expect that. That's what we're hired for. We're the experts, and we should know.
Rick said something really, really important too, and this is more recently what I've really latched onto is we have a vision for 2025 and have articulated that, and that's important because I don't know that every organization out there has done so. We're not interested in the status quo, but not growth for growth's sake. We've heard that phrase, but when I hear like senior leadership talking about, I'm not really necessarily doing this for me, but I need to get out of the way if this person wants to grow. And we believe like the way we do things, the way that the culture is, the way people feel inclusion and belonging here, that's healthy for them. Then they bring that off to their family, they bring that to their community. But in order to do that, we have to make room for those people to advance in their career, whether it's vertically or horizontally. Mm-hmm. We needed to do that. So to hear it said is like, we're not growing because, I want more of the pie. We want a bigger pie that everybody can participate in. It was really critical for me.
I agree.
Yeah, I think that the idea of how we're cultivating opportunity is a really interesting one here at CPL in particular. What I've seen in my time here is if we have somebody who wants something, even if they're really high performing in what they're currently doing, and that thing that they want is going to drive them, is going to drive the organization, it's going to create opportunity for them and for us. We're making those sacrifices to create those opportunities. And I think that's really special. We during the pandemic, and everyone's had to deal with it. It's been the thing that's exacerbated the labor market, really. I mean, we knew the labor market wasn't growing. It's just the demographics of the country, basically. But when that hit, I think one of the things that I really appreciated also about the organizations, we had this plan ahead team, and as part of that, we didn't consider the plan ahead team just to be executives. We reached down into those layers of the organization to say, what can we do? What is it that we can do? What's this gonna look like when we get on the other side? And I think we see some of those threads really playing out right now, whether it's design build or technology services. A lot of that came up in this disruptor group. And that's also some of those ideas on how we learn and train and grow our learning culture came out of that, which we're really, really getting our arms around as well. It's going to be critical to upskilling the workforce and getting more work done with fewer people. Mm-hmm. Everybody's faced with that and doing it better, honestly. Absolutely.
Yeah. I can't say it any better.
It's interesting too. I mean, even what we're doing here, right? And the capability to have these kinds of conversations, to capture them, to proliferate them. This all came out of one of the disruptor groups that came out of that initiative. So we're really demonstrating the impact of those things.
And it's interesting too. We had this conversation back in June at the the principals meeting too. And I think what's also unique about CPL is genuine, we talk about opportunity. This is another example of that, but genuine opportunity for junior staff members that, like we had this group for a long time called CPL Connect, and they had a lot of access to leadership. They had a lot of access to each other. They met, we would give them problems, real problems that the organization might be facing. They had solutions, they were integrated, and to this day, almost every one of them is still with the organization. They're thriving. Mm-hmm. They learned so much by working together and having access like that, that it's something that I think we can continue to do. It's not just that, but we're doing it through disruptor teams. You see it modeled in different ways. Yeah.
It taught us an important lesson. You can't separate yourself from the people. The people are the reason that we are who we are. Mm-hmm. And I'm one of those people. I grew up, I started as a designer and worked my way up. I'm an example of what you can be if you decide to take advantage.
Yeah. So, we talked a little bit about technology and sort of how that enables and I think helps people do their jobs easier in more interesting ways. And we talked a little bit about some of these groups and these opportunities that we're creating. What else might we be doing right now, or what else might our people be asking for that we're really leaning into in terms of sort of keeping them here, keeping them motivated, keeping them moving again in a volatile market?
So last week we had we called it a K-12 assembly. It was really a retreat. We went to Lake Placid and spent the night before getting to know each other all a little better. And then we spent an entire day talking about how we do our business. And it was interesting as just an observer. I kicked it off and then just watched. And it was interesting to see how diverse our thought is on getting projects done and how we do our work. And I think that was eye-opening for a lot of not only the leadership, but the project managers and project architects, because they realize that they're not in a bubble. Even though they may work in a cubicle or in an office, they're not alone, and they don't need to be alone. And we're so connected, but we have struggled, like everyone has through the pandemic, of getting together face to face. So this was the first time a lot of people in that room had ever actually met face to face.
That's amazing.
And I think that they're, to call them, not going to accuse them of I'm not going to call them friends or anything, but that there's a group of people that now know other people that they're going to interact. And they're going to say, hey, Todd Dalton did this before. I remember that. Mm-hmm. And they're going to call Todd. Whereas before they'd say, who's Todd Dalton? So, and sorry, Todd, for using your name.
I don't think he'll mind.
It's as we grow, it's one of those important things that we pay attention to. We use the word being intentional more often and intentionally creating opportunities for people to grow relationships, because we're finding that the retention piece has a lot to do with those relationships and understanding how you fit in, how you belong, what it's like to be here at work, and or the fluidity of working remotely potentially, or across states. So that's super critical. And we have to be really intentional about making those bridges, because a lot of that got frayed over the past 2 years probably. Plus, as we grow, so it means a little more attention has to be put onto that. We're also doing things like we have a leadership academy at this point where it's our first year run through on it, but it's a year-long intense program where I would call it we're investing in our future. We're investing in up and coming leaders, and also learning ourselves a different way of looking at leadership. But it's one of the things I wanted intentionally, not just I, but the organization wanted, was to make sure that it would stick. So there's lots of little learning bites in between. There's bigger workshops. There's books we're reading together. But all of that serves to also create a common language and reference point so we can have those relationships and we're understanding that we're on this boat together. That's been really good.
There's all included in that leadership group is a whole bunch of stories. And I find that the storytelling is really important for having it stick, as Kathy said, stickiness. You can go read a book and you retain 5% of it. Or I used to tell Kathy I'd pick a line or two out of a book, and that's all I'd really remember of the book.
Right. We share stories here too. Some that really reveal us as a entity or our organization, our culture. And I remember one, you probably remember this, where we submitted a proposal to, I think it was Monroe County, where in the cover letter it said, it's supposed to say, please don't hesitate to contact us if you have questions. And we left out one word and it said, please don't contact us. Mortified, right? So to me, we rounded the troops, had enough reprints, collected the new ones, brought them back over, replaced them. But I didn't, my job wasn't, I didn't feel like my job was on the line. Was there a little grumbling? Sure. But I think we all laughed at it, honestly, at the end.
We actually meant that.
But
We're good.
When we tell but those are stories that I continue to tell people because it says to them, it's okay if you make a mistake. It was honestly, it was pretty funny, right? But how we dealt with it as an organization mattered to me. Did I feel like I was a foot out the door after that? No, I didn't.
Yeah, there's your comment about mistakes. If you're not making mistakes, you're not doing anything, and we need to embrace those. As one of the financial fiduciaries of this company, I don't want to see $1 million mistakes, but we can tolerate mistake making as part of our growing process. I certainly made 100 mistakes every day. Still,
Yeah.
at least.
Well, there's not a lot of fear in the culture. And so I think that does, to that point, it drives innovation. It drives people to give things a shot and to try something.
To your point, people having opportunities we talk about growth vertically, like through, from project engineer to manager and onward, but there's also that lateral movement, trying a whole new position. We've had people that are moving from department to department and trying new things. And I think that spirit of openness and that helps people really find what their strengths are, what they love to do.
Yeah.
I think you guys both have heard me during the business planning sessions that we're going to be rolling out in the next couple months, the results of those. But you've heard me say yes, the answer, and you've heard everyone else in the room say, Rick has said this for 20 years. When a client asks us, can we do this? We answer yes, because we can. I may not be able to answer it, but I know that we have somebody that can answer it.
Yeah. And there's a foundation that's not a sales strategy. It's a foundation of confidence, right? It's not get the project, get the sale. So there's a really interesting energy around that sort of yes culture that I think is really positive, and it creates opportunity. If it's something a little new, a little different, we'll figure it out. And I think we have a tremendous success rate doing that.
Yes.
I want to talk a little bit, you were talking about the K-12 assembly, and you were talking about some of the groups that we created. And, over the course of the pandemic, but I would argue in the world now, there's a lot of communication. There's a lot of ways to interact with one another, but not necessarily a lot of connection. And I think, there's something really interesting in the culture of CPL over the past year and a half, but even going forward, about finding those ways to create connection between people. And I'm just curious sort of how you guys are seeing our people create those kinds of connections and build their teams in ways that there is a lot of relationship and understanding of each other, even knowing that we're growing and not everybody is with their team directly. Can you speak to any of that?
So I'm not sure I'm going to answer the question the I'll try and answer. Everyone communicates a little differently, every team, and the teams are not necessarily practice areas or disciplines or marketing or agent. Teams are just groups of people. And CPL, the reason we picked team, even though it's not in our name, is that's at least the definition I saw, maybe in Webster's, maybe Merriam, was a group of people working together towards a common goal. I think that's what our team is. That's what all of the collection of teams are. They all communicate differently. You communicate with your group differently than Dan Dupre communicates with the transportation team. They get on the phone video 2 days a week and talk about their projects. The municipal team, more segmented, does Western New York, does Eastern New York, does the South, but at a leadership level, we talk to each other, but the junior level people do not. That's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's just is the way it is. I think that there's there's a sense out there that we have too many forms of communication, but I also sense that people like it that way, and we got to continue to provide some flexibility for the people that communicate in one way versus another way.
Right. Having a regular cadence of those kind of, whether it's weekly, touch points with individuals, I think is important. That's part of that coaching that we all want from team leaders. And then also as teams, maybe you do that, but I love your point about a team not necessarily being, it's not just your discipline or your region, but we form teams all the time. Project teams are based, we're pulling the right people from wherever, again, the right people to be on different teams. So there's that networking, that ability to be flexible, not pigeonholed, is really also part of this culture and retention that I think people would appreciate. So if you want to explore different types of work or work with different project managers, we'd have that opportunity here. But you always do have your home team as well. There's always your home team, and then you go off and do projects and exciting things.
And the way we communicate, for people that are listening to this, I didn't start really actively using Huddle until maybe 2 months ago. I viewed it as a Facebook thing and I'm not on Facebook, and I'm not going to post anything. It's silly. I don't have anything really relevant to post. But then I really met with not only other leaders, but I also met with some of our staff in Buffalo and Olean and Jamestown, and they expressed some concern over, or confusion, I would say, not really concern, but confusion over what our vision meant. So I started to reflect on that and saying, well, how can you be confused about this? But I realized that I carry it in my bag. I carry the vision around with me everywhere I go. I recognize that not everyone else does that. Not everyone else is as intimate with the vision as I am. It's really my purpose. So I needed to explain in little bite-sized bits of what the vision is, how we're achieving it, and recognizing that we have been talking about this for a year, at a certain level. We announced it to the company in March, and then we probably, because we wanted to let people know, but we weren't ready. We weren't ready to roll this out, and it took us 3 or 4 months to figure out what in the world are we going to do? How are we going to do this? How are we going to make this happen? And I think that once we started figuring out how we were going to do this, then we started with some more communication. I've heard and seen some people express frustration of, how are we going to get there? What are we going to do? What was my role? And trust us, we're getting there. But there needed to be some homework done, and we weren't ready. Mm-hmm. We were ready to start the homework, but we hadn't done the homework before we really set the vision.
Yeah, that's an excellent point.
Communication tool Rick talked about for our listeners, the Huddle is really an interesting platform, but it's one of those investments. You talk about being ready, but learning, as we were growing, we knew we needed to have this other means of communication and sharing information and connecting people. So that's what really was the catalyst for beginning Huddle. It does have that sort of social feed part, but we're learning things about project wins, about, people's promotions, about new people, about the vision. So putting it out there is important. Mm-hmm. It's a great tool.
It actually was, at least the way I saw it, it was a tool to help because we were growing so fast, mm-hmm. Having people understand the type of work that we do, where we do it. There was not really a whole lot of interconnectedness mm-hmm. among the geographies. And we needed to have some more knowledge out there. That was the main, at least the way I viewed it, that was the main reason for going down that path mm-hmm. of creating Huddle.
Yeah. Huddle's a really interesting, I think, sort of case study for connectivity at CPL. As a communications professional, I've launched intranets. I've helped clients foster them. I've never seen anything as robust and utilized as our intranet. And I think a lot of it does speak to it. Like, people, they want to share, they want to get that engagement. It's also just a fantastic resource for knowledge and understanding of what we're doing. I've never been interested in having my company's intranet open all the time. And here, people have it open all the time. It's fascinating. When you say that, like, it's funny. I was talking to Kate, who answers the phones, which is pretty awesome that we have a 450-person organization and someone's still answering the phones. Mm-hmm. But she says she has it open, and that way, like, if someone calls and is looking for, they might not know the name, but they might not know what the person's working on, because it's so interrelated. She's got that open, and she's able to do that. But when you speak about communication, one of the other things that we do here is we have everyone take it's like a Myers-Briggs type assessment about communication to learn a little bit about our communication preferences. And that's on Huddle, it's on our little mm-hmm. door plaques, and no titles there, but it tells you better how to communicate with each other. And so when people learn about me, that, the last letter in it's ENFJ, I think you are too, which is funny. I don't INTJ.
Yes. So the J is that judger thing. So I'm telling stories. So I realize that my husband is not a J. So he's wants to explore all the possibilities. And I want to make decisions. I might want to move. And mm-hmm. so when we do grocery shopping together, he's going to look at for 3 things, because he's going to read the ingredients, and I'm going to have the whole rest of the list because I just want to go get what I'm going to get. But I don't. But now why would I get mad at? That's just what he's like, and I can't So now I can prep and say, okay, I want to make sure that I've got my bullets in order, or this person wants the whole story. So I think helping us understand each other in that way too is really helpful as communicators.
It's a really interesting investment that we've made too in those tools, but also in understanding one another. I think as a participant in the leadership cohort, right, part of what I get out of that, and I've talked to others, is understanding one another and how we communicate, right? So I think there was a question in the last one around what kinds of people do you find challenging to communicate with? And one of our engineers stood up and said, architects. And everybody laughed. But it was a really important insight, right? And it was so relatable for so many people. I mean, you take engineers and architects and marketers and cultural professionals, we think about things completely differently. And we're entrenched in the way that we think about things. I think we do a really nice job sort of opening those things up and helping provide the tools
Yeah,
for that
and
connection.
going to bring up that word intentional again. But when you do know that and you're building teams, for example, you want to build a project team, and maybe you start to think about like, I'm in this meeting and I want to make sure that we're engaging so-and-so, but they're more of an introvert, so let's make sure they're prepared ahead of time. So the expectations are different, and it's not like, oh, they're not interested. And having that understanding is really huge to how we can get work done better. Appreciate each other more.
Yeah. So let's transition a little bit and talk about recruitment, which is sort of the big scary R, I think, in our industry and so many others right now. What are you guys seeing sort of across the market and in the industry in terms of trends and challenges with finding new talent?
We are finding that the employee has always been right, but now they're even more right, and that there definitely is a buyer's market. They're shopping their services. They're getting premium wage and whatever they want in terms of whether it be flexibility, whatever. And we want to be able to provide that, but we also need to do it in a way that fits within what we do and what we can charge for our services. We are a business, and we have to ultimately charge our clients for the service. So it becomes a balancing act of how much can we afford to pay for that particular employee, and how much is the client willing to pay for that particular employee.
So I love how you put that as a balancing act, and it's gotten harder. I think the past year, I think we've known for years, like, every kind of senior leadership type meeting we talked about some of the challenges, but now it's really intensified just because of people leaving the workforce during COVID or for whatever reason. So I think it's shrinking even a little bit more. And we're finding there was that gap in after 2008, the first economic downturn, a lot of people left the industry, so that there's this gap in middle level management, and we're quickly filling that though, because I think the people coming up through are really talented, and with new technologies, I think that gap is disappearing. But some things it takes time to learn. It's that experience part of learning.
There's actually been 3 of those gaps, because we've been around forever. There was a gap in '94. There was a gap after 2001. And I don't think that there's ever been any study associated with it.
I have a really interesting question to ask you. I've heard this in one of an HR group, and it usually has a little bit to do with marketing. Do you think that the A&E industry has we could do a better job with our image in general, like making this an attractive place for people to work? Because it really is a pretty great career if done right, which I think we do. But, I wonder if you got people choosing, well, I want to be a game developer, I want to be something else. But can you think that we as an industry can do a better job with that?
Of course. I mean, I think that that's a really relevant question, and it leads us into another whole thought about recruitment that we're starting to investigate. And it really, I'm not going to name any names, but we met with a company last week that we're talking to about maybe doing this, maybe. It's a maybe. But what their strategy is hiring kids out of school and having them trained and stay. And
that's their philosophy. Yeah.
And and they don't look to recruit somebody that's 40 to come into the middle. They're looking to grow their people from 22, 21, whatever age they graduate college, and grow them into somebody that could lead the firm. That's what I did. But I think there's a study out there that kids graduating in the last 5 years changed jobs 12, 14 times.
That's exhausting.
Which is hard because of when we look at this field, I mean, it's a practice. It's like when you're an engineer or an architect or plant, like there's a growth to that to become really good at it and to understand and learn what know what you don't know as well. And it's a lifelong learning path that you're on, but making that like attractive and supporting people through that is really critical. So I think that whole concept of creating a learning culture is huge. And the way they do it is, bringing people on early on and then moving them up on through.
And you've said this numerous times, in just you and me meeting and or at company-wide meetings, 10,000 hours. That's what it takes to become really an expert. That's 5 years full-time. And you're not working full-time at being an expert at designing one thing. In this organization, you're working on multiple projects and multiple durations, different things that you're working on. You could be designing a water main, you could be designing a road, you could be designing a parking lot, and those things are all different pieces of expertise that all take 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, and learning in the flow of work, because like learning as you're doing is really what we're talking about. So and helping our team leaders understand how to help people do that better. But the recruiting problem isn't just a CPL problem, isn't just an A&E problem. I mean, it's everywhere. We're finding, I think, as you said too. But
yeah, so I started down a path of saying what we're looking at. So we're partnering with the schools. We're starting in Western New York. We're going to expand this, hopefully to the entire company. But we're working with the schools to identify in both middle school, high school, or in middle school, high school, community college, and four-year schools. We're going to figure out what their needs are and try and help provide those needs so that we can be part of the solution. I mean, where we struggle the most is diversity of thought. I'm not talking about diversity the way people necessarily think about diversity. I'm also concerned about that in our industry as well. To share, I think we had 25 kids graduate in civil engineering from University of Buffalo, where I went, the year that I went, or the years that I went. There was no diversity and 2 women. So we had 23 white guys and 2 women, and that's it. And so how do we get diversity in our industry when that's what's graduating college? So we've got to get at them young, and we've got to try to get them interested in our industry, and we're doing that really through technology. Kathy mentioned the video gaming. A lot of the rendering stuff that we do is really video gaming. It's a very similar process, and it'd be great if we can get kids that can think that way and then turn into architects, hopefully engineers too, but certainly architects.
Right, that diversity of thought and background is really critical, because that makes a stronger project, stronger team, stronger organization. And I think as we branch out, we do, as we're recruiting, we have bonuses for folks that use their internal networks and bring people to us. That works really well. The downside to that is they're typically like us. Your network is like you. So we are making those efforts to reach out intentionally to the schools. You have to, at least get them interested. They're making sort of career decisions. We're in their 8th, 7th, 8th grade, time period. And that's really amazing that to get in there and be part of the system to help folks make those decisions.
Yeah, so I know Todd's meeting with RIT and MCC. I'm meeting with University of Buffalo with Mike Mastriner. I don't know the date yet, but I think it's mid-December. I do know the date, but it's mid-December. That's exactly what we're talking about, is how do we help produce the talent that we know is there. They just pick different fields, and we'd like them to engineering and architecture are really good fields to be involved in. And it's not those aren't the only fields. We have marketing, we have HR, we have finance, we have a whole bunch of things that we can do as an organization, and that's something that has changed over time. We used to be just architects and engineers, and now we're not.
People that are good at client relationships and selling and really promoting the business. People that are technical experts. So again, back that theme of opportunity is really huge. So, recruiting, we're using the tools that most folks are using, but also these other new ones, I think is where we're going to really get the edge.
I'm curious, as we're sort of out there recruiting and having conversations really with a wide kind of breadth of types of recruits, right? You're talking to a 7th grader, you're having a very different conversation than somebody who's coming in with a couple years under their belt and demanding what we're seeing. What kinds of things, particularly with those recruits that are coming into roles in the organization now, outside of the compensation kind of play that everybody's dealing with, what other things are they looking for? What are they asking about that we're able to lean in and say, you can really find that here?
So we've sort of talked about some of this. The technology is, we need to be in tune with what kids are graduating college with, the tools. That's something that we fell behind probably over the, not in the last couple of years, but probably the preceding 10 or 15 years. The flexibility is a big deal. I think office environment is something that is pretty critical. I mean, when I started, I went to the basement, but I didn't really think about it. It was a different time and different age. Today, kids are, I don't mean to call them kids, but they are kids. The kids today are looking for something more experiential.
Yeah, we use that term, the work experience, whether it's a flexible work experience or what is it like to be in the office? What opportunities are there to get up and what is the space like? I think that's important as well. And again, it's not, and flexibility isn't just really flexibility about location. That's important for people, but I think we get asked time-wise, like, wow, can I be in it 8:30 and leave a little early? Yes, you can. Answer yes. And I think that we hear a lot too about growth paths. They really want to know what opportunities are there and how do I get there. So we, with job descriptions that are new to our organization, we loved the flexibility and not pigeonholing. That was sort of the philosophy for a long time, but understanding though that people really do want to know and they want to see their path. They want to see what opportunities are out there. So laying that out is really important.
Yeah, when we go through interviews now, and I think everyone has their individual take on how they do an interview. I don't interview people. I recruit them. And so I spend most of the time talking. Maybe I shouldn't, but I spend most of the time trying to convince them that we're the right place for that person. Because if you're a graduate, and most of the people I'm recruiting are engineers. So as somebody that went to school, you're certainly capable. So let's figure out how to get you on board, and what are the things that you need for me to be able to convince you to come work for us.
So the marketing person is going to ask this question. Is there sort of a moment or a light bulb in those conversations where you can sort of say like, oh, that's the thing that like that's where I have them?
With particular people, yes. Some people are more guarded, but yes, there is a moment with most people where I can figure out I've got them, and I've hooked them. Now I need to reel them in.
Yeah, one of the other things I'll say that works with recruiting is the caliber and amazing projects that we're doing now. I think it matters to some people, and the other people on the team with them. I think that matters a lot because they're starting to see, the amazing work that and the technology that is part of that. But don't you think? Yeah.
You make a great point, Kathy. I mean, especially when it comes to building something. And I'm not talking about building buildings, but building something. People want to be involved in cool stuff, and they don't want to replace water services and do sidewalk projects unless it's got a bigger purpose. We have a project right now in Niagara Falls where we're replacing water services, but we're replacing lead water services. I mean, I think everyone knows that lead is bad. Lead is bad for the human. And we have probably, just in Niagara Falls alone, we have $60-70 million worth of work that needs to be done to eliminate lead.
That's part of our job, though. That's kind of what I'm saying, is to help people understand the work that we do in a way that's really meaningful. We talk about, we do this beautiful design work architecturally, and engineering, it might be a little twist on it, but those clients are equally as important to us. They're really our bread and butter too, but to the person that bridge is the only way that they're going to get home, that means a lot. So you have to think about what the stories that we're telling and the importance of the work that we do. I think there's, again, if people really deeply understood that, it's pretty attractive, I think.
And it speaks to their purpose as an individual, right?
Right, yeah.
I'm curious, sort of, what kinds of people are we looking for in terms of whether it's that purpose, that motivation? Certainly there are core skills like you talked about, right? There are technical skills we're always looking for. But what else are you looking for? What do you get a read on and you're like, that's a CPL person?
We're looking for somebody that's community minded. When I review somebody's resume, frankly, if they put their GPA on there, that's an automatic. I put them in the basket I'll look at later. What I care about is, have they done any volunteer work? Are they active in the community? Do they spend some of their own time doing some of those activities to make their community better? And it doesn't matter. It could be coaching. It could be Cub Scout leader. I'm not talking about things that are necessarily impactful for CPL as it relates to the community, but somebody that really does care about the community.
Yeah, to some degree too. There's some characteristics is that curiosity and that sort of drive. However, we can try and find that. Sometimes making sure that people know that, hey, we haven't quite got this figured out. Are you okay with that? That's a conversation we had recently, and that's kind of, again, it's how we figure things out. But getting people, not everybody's okay with that, and that's okay. You have to understand that. But build the plane while you're flying it kind of concept, and we do some of that.
We're doing it right now with the Leadership Galaxy. There's not a hierarchy, and that's intentional. I did not want to see us have scaffolding. That's a good word, scaffolding. It's an engineering word, an architecture word, and it can work in HR. So
that's sort of an interesting segue as we think about kind of wrapping. You talked about the vision, and you talked about sort of the changes that we made in terms of how we're structured, going from a really flat organization to a level of structure without hierarchy. What are, as we go through all of this change and so much of it is positive and we're looking for so much growth, what's the experience we want to make sure that we maintain for our people at CPL? What's sort of some of the spirit that we're continuing?
I think to follow along with what Kathy said, I think people, I think they want to work on stuff that makes them feel like they want to get up in the morning. And, I listened to my dad told me this 35 years ago. Don't ever take a job where you're dreading going to work. And I know that some days are not the greatest, and some days you have to do things that you don't really necessarily want to do. But in general, have a lot more good days than bad. And you feel like you're serving some greater good. Mm-hmm. And it can be that's going to be different for every person. Some people may equate that to really good design. Some people may equate that to helping somebody that needs the help. I think that there's different things that people are attracted to, mm-hmm. And we try to be flexible and provide whatever those things are so that we can keep them.
Yeah, that's great.
Mm-hmm. I would just maybe add on that remaining connected to each other and working on that is something that we don't want to lose. Whatever the future of the workforce looks like, that those threads are the things that help us work really well together. It bridges all those gaps, and it's like amazing when you meet someone and you have those conversations, how easy it is to make that phone call the next time. Hey, I remember this, can we work on this together? And that's got to continue. Mm-hmm. And I don't see any reason why it won't. And then making sure, Rick said something once, and making it okay that it's a little bit it's hard to work here sometimes, because you said that, and I keep thinking about that, and in some ways it's like really great because you don't get complacent, you don't get really stuck in a but it's always set like, what's around the corner? It's like, what's next? It's kind of cool.
I'm going to use that. I'm going to use the job descriptions as an example. We set out on a path probably in March to have job descriptions done by May, and it took until October. The reason it took that long was because I resisted it. I resisted job descriptions because I didn't want to pigeonhole anybody. I also didn't want people just checking the box. Mm-hmm. Your job is your job, whatever that is. It doesn't necessarily fit into a list. There's going to be things. I think we added some language at the end of job description. Mm-hmm. There's going to be things that you've got to do.
Yeah.
And I learned early on, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to stay here, is Phil Clark, our founder. We were working on the landfill. Kathy and I both worked on the landfill. And as a segue, as I grew up in the company and started to understand the financials, the landfill was the total revenue for the project was greater than what we had ever done on any other project, mm-hmm. collectively. So it was massive. Mm-hmm. It doubled the size of our practice overnight. And I remember we had shift work on because we had to be done by a certain day, mm-hmm. or else the county was going to get fined $50,000 a day. Wow. And Phil had committed to paying for that $50,000 if we didn't finish. So we were all motivated, mm-hmm. To get it done. And I remember being on a second shift one night. It was 8:00, and my job at the time for the second shift was just hitting a button and making sure the plotter had ink in it and the pen and paper in there. Nobody let me touch AutoCAD. So, mm-hmm. But Phil came down and he picked up a set of the drawings and he went to the blueprint machine and he started making blueprints. And he says, I got to do what needs doing. And that, somebody that is willing to help out, do whatever it takes. I think that has really permeated through, even though we've grown exponentially and we have different locations than when Phil was here, I think that culture has continued.
Yeah, that's a great example too of it's not just about sacrifice, but it is about pitching it in, getting it done, sharing in the success, sort of rising together, which is an intrinsic motivation, right? So as we kind of wrap up, I guess I would just ask each of you to answer, what are you most excited about as we sort of venture into the next phases of our vision and our growth?
Well, you guys asked this question before to me, and I'm just going to give you the same answer. Nothing if not consistent. Opportunity. We have created a platform that allows for people to grow wherever they want to grow. And I think that if we continue down this path of our vision, that'll take people actually grabbing onto the opportunity. We're not going to be in this for long if it's just us. We need everyone.
That's such a great statement, that we need everyone. We need everyone on this journey with us. And I feel like we need everyone on this journey with us. It's opportunity, and I'm really excited to see, as I see the arc of my career, making, I can see the end, but really excited to see those coming up in the ranks. And some folks, whether they were, part of CPL Connect or part of our leadership academy, or these amazing technical experts that, you bump into, but seeing, it's really, it's really impressive to me, but to see like 10 years from now, what's going to be different because of something that they did. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah. I'm as well. It's an exciting time for us. There's a lot of change. There's a lot of growth. There's a lot happening in the world that creates opportunity as well.
One more thing. And I love that idea, but I think that what's really cool, though, what we're doing is not waiting for something to happen to us because of that. There's a lot of change out there. It's everywhere, but taking the reins and we're deciding where we're going to go and how we're going to handle that. That's really different too. And I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out.
Absolutely. Well, and you two are a huge part of that, right? Our leadership is really providing some fantastic sort of guidance and also openness and inviting people into the process as we figure out, well, how are we really going to execute on our vision and harness the market the way we should be? So very much appreciate your time and your stories. It was a great conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks.